The environment is not a sexy topic, and because of that, it doesn't get the right coverage. Now, this is partly our fault because we don't like talking about the elephant in the room, and this is also down to the media, let's face it. If you are the BBC or Channel 4, Sky News, you determine what goes on the air, so you determine what's relevant. This is something that affects absolutely every human being on the planet, regardless of how much money you have. Now, I bring this up because we've had a number of documents leaked in the last few years. A number of credible scientists and groups of scientists saying the same thing that we keep ignoring. Now, go back 100 years, it turns out that these energy companies knew this was going to happen. They saw the trend. They knew that if they carried on the way that they were, climate change would get to the point it would be so drastic that human life would be in jeopardy. However, partly through greed, they carried on. But they also carried on thinking that future generations wouldn't be so stupid as to carry on with the way that they were going. Well, they were wrong. We have credible, viable energy alternatives, but we're still feeding the energy industry. Mostly because people like the Koch brothers pay massive amounts of money to politicians, and politicians determine what countries do. Bring up to recent years. 4 or 5 years ago, under the Obama administration, we had a group of scientists saying, look, if we stop everything right now, then we've got about 100 years. 100 years until we hit crisis levels. Not an extremely hot summer like we've just had in the UK, but actual levels where human beings will struggle to survive. We didn't stop. We carried on. Trump took over. Trump is a man who has said that climate change is a Chinese hoax. His vice president, Michael Pence, flat out denies climate change completely. He also thinks the Earth is 10,000 years old. I don't think that's connected to this. I just want to point that out. For the when Trump finally gets impeached, we still have to deal with that muppet. But back to climate change. The Trump administration have just released a document, or at least had an internal memo leaked to the public saying climate change has actually got a lot more serious than we first thought. Because we didn't stop 4 or 5 years ago, that crisis deadline has dropped from 100 years. We are now expected to have 80 years before we have drastic, potentially catastrophic changes. But Trump's administration is not handling this the right way. Of course not. Their response is, well, we might as well crack on and get as much as we possibly can out while we're still here. So even though they know that in 80 years they could completely destroy the planet beyond that of where human life is actually able to sustain or thrive, they want to carry on. Theresa May, either this year or last year, despite vast protests against it, found a very sneaky way of opening up a fracking site in the UK. The list of horrors that come from fracking just go on and on and on, and the benefits aren't worth it, especially when we have viable energy alternatives. This is going to take absolutely everyone. So contact your local MP, contact Michael Gove, who's meant to be looking out for the environment, contact absolutely everyone on the political spectrum. Tweet them, send them emails, write them letters over and over and over again. Because 80 years is not a long time. What happens in America will affect, on a climate basis, on a global basis, what happens here. Toxic air doesn't just stop at a border. Temperatures don't stop at borders. This is a serious issue and it needs to be taken that way. So contact your local MP, demand answers, and if they don't hold up, hold them accountable. This is not something we can continue to ignore.